Here's one of the prime examples of why OJSnip4 watches and follows the webbot and its predictions. I know we've heard recently about some pedophile cases reaching very high levels of society, and some recent news broke over in the UK. Head of the BBC or something's now tied to some investigative thing. He's stepping down now. Had to do with these sex crimes on children from the 80s or whatever. This is interesting because I have a video at the end of this, me speaking, that you're going to watch from I think it was a BBC Channel 4 something news, where they're talking to two individuals. One's like, I don't know what their titles are, but they're like I don't know if it's like a mayor and a police chief or something, I don't recall. But you'll see it at the end of this video. And in it, the guy starts talking. It's odd because the lady that's the news lady interviewing them or talking to them mentions, do you think now people will say accept what you said earlier seriously? So apparently this guy, whoever he is, the one guy, had made allegations that there's a pedophilia, whatever, ring of people, very high levels, secret societies, etc. And he was kind of laughed at way back when. Now he's back on the front scene saying, hey, it's not so funny. It's not so conspiratorial anymore, is it? That's where she kind of goes with him. And he even says how it's tied to Freemasons. This whole sex scandal, pedophilia deal. Having said that, and I'm going to, again, you're going to watch the video as soon as I'm done talking. I'm going to go ahead and read the webbot report. And by the way, it's about a 3-point-whatever-minute long video. I was going to cut it down to half because you don't need to, I don't think you need to see the rest of it unless you want to. I guess it doesn't really matter. But let me just go ahead and read this old webbot report. This webbot report was created a couple months ago based on data months and months before that, as we all know how it works. There's no question that this didn't just get printed and I'm reading it. I've had it in my possession just like a lot of other people have since whatever it was, late September or whenever this thing came out. Excuse me. This latest report, webbot report. So all this has already been read, and by the way, I've already read this prior to today, this particular section, because of the beginning stages of this same pedophile case that's now branching out and becoming larger. Other entities were involved, so now I'm reading that. Okay, throw it in the trash. So it starts with the final paragraph talking about the housing industry, how that's about to take a dump, and people are going to start pondering whether they should even make payments on their mortgages anymore, which I appreciate that. I like that, actually. The USA housing market is further indicated to go into dangerous territory as model space is progressed through fall. Well, that's where we are now, by the way, fall. The dangerous territory, and again, I'm the first one to tell you when it gives dates and times, and the webbot's not perfect. It sometimes can miss those things big time as far as the dates and times. And then later on they come sneaking up and it becomes a hit later. This time it's one of those times again where this seems to be right on target, at least so far. So this progressed through fall. The dangerous territory aspect/attribute data set is in itself filled with confusion and chaos. The subsets in support of the dangerous territory set includes a new dumping of foreclosed houses, as well as scandal about tainted building materials used nationwide, and now the now more or less expected bank failures and exposed banking corruption and exposed banking incompetence. And by the way, the word incompetence, when you hear it on the news or government officials, they use that on purpose. You want to be naked on video in front of everybody? Yeah, go that way. I'll be done in a minute. Yeah. So, like I was saying, banking incompetence. When they use the word incompetence, you hear it on TV, it's a favorite of politicians, it's a favorite of the government. We had incompetent people at the CFTC, regulators. We got rid of them. We got new regulators. Oh, where are they from? Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. Great. So you removed incompetent people in charge to replace them with more incompetent people in charge. That's just a fancy word of saying they're not incompetent at all. They're our people who are paid to look the other way when we rape and pillage the countries in the world of their whole financial system. They are regulators. They clearly see what we're doing, but they came from our companies, and when they leave the CFTC and the SEC, they'll be gladly welcomed back with open arms to any of our high-paying jobs at any of these banks, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, etc. So when you hear the word incompetence, and you're going to hear the word incompetence coming soon, it's going to be a new theme you hear all over the news. These incompetent regulators, incompetent bankers, incompetence. Nothing is incompetent. It is all planned. It is all designed. They are doing their job. They call it incompetence because when they've done it as far as they can and everyone's now saying, hey, what the hell's going on? They've been let go. We got new people in charge that are not incompetent. And again, who are they? More of the same group. There's a whole line of them with the word banker stamped on their back. And it's a revolving door. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the government. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the government. So they switch them out and make you think, all right, finally, they weeded out the garbage. They took out the trash. No, you clown. That person left and is now getting paid, again, at a nice, fat-paying job at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or one of the other banks. And someone else came to replace them. Expert in the industry, who has their training by the same banks to look the other way. Having said that, back on track. That was a little bonus educational piece from Jason 4 to you. Here's where the juicy stuff starts regarding what we're talking about here, the pedophiles. There are several data sets accruing in the markets entity. And again, an entity in the webbot is kind of like its own little bubble of different topics, that kind of thing. Different data sets or topics. There are several data sets accruing in the markets entity for a series or interrelated group of new scandals that will shake officialdom by way of the markets infrastructure. In at least 2 of these new scandals, there will be links or ties or connections to distressing sexual crimes. There are some sets suggesting that a vastly expanded pedophilia case in which a leading participant was or will be recently suicided. Keep that in mind, because this guy, the head of the BBC, maybe it's him, he's about to get suicided, he's about to drown in his pool on accident. Someone else, just keep your eyes and ears open, and if anything sounds like they are tied to this, spoke about pedophilia, there were whatever, send it to JSNIP4 so I can cover this. So, there will be ties, links, connections to distressing sexual crimes. There are some data sets suggesting that a vastly expanded pedophilia case in which a leading participant, which means it's got to be a pretty high-level person, was or will be recently suicided, and that will spark a near riot among or within a trading area that will be visible on alternative media. The spark noted for this riot will be when several traders, possibly a trading house, Wall Street, etc., learns that their work has been entirely in laundering money for this particular pedophile group, and causes them to flip out and get very pissed off knowing that they've been working monetarily laundering money for this disgusting, despicable group. Further data sets indicate that these markets/Wall Street sexual corruption crimes will also precipitate a boiling or frothing among the members of Freemasonry. Apparently, it will come out as part of this scandal of sexual crime cover-ups that Masonry as a whole is now controlled by and corrupted by a global pedophilia group. Note that the data suggests that many links, connections, trails, links, connections, or trails that will lead directly back to the papacy, the old Catholic Church. Ooh. And the nominal pope and the black pope/Jesuits, whatever, are this time going to be too exceptional and too noteworthy to cover up, as the new scandals are brewing and twisting the guts/intestines of officialdom in the background. The data points to discontent within the market's participants as the unspoken rule base crumbles. This lexical structure is filled with data sets supporting the idea that normal market behavior is completely lost / disintegrates, along with metrics / numbers that used to have been proven useful in the past, not so any longer. So in other words, the fake crap that you hear that, oh, markets rise because of housing numbers are markets rise, gone. Note that this area is internally cross-linked over in support of the precious metals data sets, where it forms a positive for the metals pressure point. These same positive pressures for precious metals prices in fiat currencies globally are a negative effect for global social stability. Let's see if there's anything out here. I'll just go ahead and read this as a second bonus because I love handing out bonuses. I'm going to read you this other paragraph, not necessarily tied to that, but it's here. I feel like I should read it to you. As part of the transformational process that the population US of A entity, data entity, encounters post-election, so after election, the data sets are forecasting that a great housing price crash will occur. Or something to that effect, he says. The data is admittedly somewhat confusing in the plethora of details that begin to overwhelm our data as model space is moved to about, say, mid-November. These detail sets are repeatedly referencing both housing and people on the move. In neither case does this appear to be a good thing. The emotional sums are completely negative for these sets, both individually and in combination. It would appear that this winter, Northern Hemisphere, brings both bad weather, such that people are forced out of homes. Didn't we just have Hurricane Sandy? Wasn't Hurricane Sandy happening after the Webbot report was printed? And then on top of it, we had this crazy snowstorm that pushed people out of their houses also because of the damage Sandy had done, etc. Yes. And again, this is after this Webbot report was printed. Isn't that amazing? So it says, and in neither case, it does not appear to be a good thing. The emotional sums are completely negative for the data for these sets, both individually and in combination. It would appear that this winter, Northern Hemisphere, brings both bad weather, such that people are forced out of homes, but also an attempt by the banking industry to, quote, flush the system. It would appear, that is to say that we are inferring from the data, that a move by the rich / bankers / corrupt will take place shortly after the election, during the height of the emotional confusion surrounding and dominating the electoral process, in which they, the banks, will attempt to unload vast numbers of houses onto the market, as well as to increase foreclosures through the system in record pace. Both of these efforts are described as creating social chaos that will manifest in different ways in different parts of the nation and planet. In some instances, the flooding by banks of real estate markets is described as causing riots in villages / towns that will actually end up destroying hundreds, if not thousands, of empty houses. I just read today, this morning, in France, Spain, you know, the one that's collapsing like Greece is, that I already said would happen before they even said anything about it, because I'm following basic common sense things and I'm watching numbers, politicians moving their mouth, lying. I called it long ago, and not that I'm some kind of deserve a cookie or something, or a Nobel Peace Prize for figuring that out. I think a monkey could have figured that out, but I just want to throw that out there. I just heard a second time in Spain, an older lady who was being foreclosed on due to the crisis over there, no work, no money, etc. She jumped out of the window to her death in front of everybody, and people got a little upset about it. And Rajoy, whatever his name is, the prime minister, whatever that is, bozo clown is over there, I'm putting a temporary halt on all foreclosures for the most damaging of effects to people. In other words, I forgot the term they use, but like in worse circumstances, you know, an old lady, a family with children going to be thrown on the street, whatever the case. If it's one of these higher priority ones, we're going to not kick them out. That's what he said. I just read it freaking today. Just like I'm going to play this video that was actually uploaded yesterday, and I got it today, I downloaded it so I can re-upload it again today, about the Freemason connection to the pedophilia ring. So let's just read that one last time. In some instances, the flooding by the banks of real estate markets is described as causing riots in villages/towns that will actually end up destroying hundreds, if not thousands, of empty houses. In other more emotionally settled area, the data shows that electronic communities will descend upon abandoned or foreclosed subdivisions and replace locks wholesale, and then distribute houses to the homeless in the area. There's a lot more to read. I'm getting out of what I came here to do. I'm going to stop there. Is that what we're going to see next in Spain and in Greece and in other places? Didn't necessarily say here in the U.S., but it will come here if it's already happening there. It's just a matter of what they're doing over there when they start to do it here, such as you're getting cut pay wages, getting cut, government employees getting slashed, workforces diminishing, austerity measures for all U.S. citizens. When it comes here, it'll be the same as there. So now is a little look. If you want to know what your future could potentially hold, high potential, look at what happened in Greece and is currently happening, as well as in Spain, only to get worse. Having said that, I am now going to play the video for you to show you what this guy has to say and how he uses the word Freemasons and how it's tied to this massive giant pedophilia ring now being exposed, which was told to you in advance by myself, because I also covered this the day it came out. A couple days later, I read it, did my summary, and read this particular section as well. That was a little while ago, long before this word pedophilia thing came out in the news, in the mainstream, anywhere. In this damn webbot that people criticize me of many times, of paying attention to this piece of crap, you're an idiot. This damn thing nailed it. Again, and again, and again. It's not always right, as I've said. It's right so much so, enough, for me anyways, that I pay attention to it. And I have a lot of people who love when I read this kind of stuff because they want to know about it too. There's just a few people, just a few, as usual, that think it's complete nonsense, don't want to hear it, and you know what? I almost care. I almost care that you don't care. This has been extremely useful to me. I'm going to play the video. Take care.
Well, joining me now is Councillor Keith Gregory, who you just saw in that report from Kieran Jenkins, and Bill Brereton, a former Deputy Police Commissioner here in North Wales. Well, Keith Gregory, do you have any confidence now that you'll be listened to and believed in these latest inquiries?
I'm quite hopeful. I'm quite confident, to be honest, now that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the Welsh Assembly have promised not to leave no stones unturned, and that I'm quite hopeful.
The Waterhouse inquiry promised that, though, last time. What gives you that hope that things will be different now?
I think people have changed the views of the views that people seen used to think about.
The culture's changed.
Yeah, culture change, that's what it is.
Bill Brereton, we've had dozens of police investigations, more than a dozen council inquiries, the Waterhouse report, all of these inquiries, and yet so few convictions. Why do you think that is?
I think there's lots of reasons. I mean, for me, the way forward is quite properly to have an outside force investigation, and that's been called for, as I understand it. I think it's very important that right up front, everyone is required to declare whether they have been or currently are a Mason. Section 81 of the Waterhouse report touches on it very fleetingly. It may or may not be a problem, but let's have it out in the open and make sure that people know what's going on.
Well, because the Masons were, and maybe still are, very powerful here. I mean, do you think there were people being protected by pillars of the establishment? I
don't know. I mean, you know, there's an investigation to be done, and clearly that's not me because I'm retired. But the fact that the questions there needs solving, it needs clearing once and for all, and the suggestion that there could be undue influences has to be dealt with. I was never a Mason, never have been, never will be, and I was always very clear on that, and therefore it never touched on me. But I think it's that concern that if you don't know, you just don't know what's going on in the background.
Keith Gregory, are the Masons an avenue that needs to be investigated?
Masons definitely need to be investigated, especially in North Wales. I think nearly everyone, especially on the list that I have, are all members of some sort of Masonic lodge.
The Prime Minister's spoken today about the danger of a witch hunt, and you've got to say that a lot of these allegations relate to many decades ago. You're relying on people's memories. How much of a concern do you think that is?
I don't think it'll ever turn into a witch hunt. I hope it doesn't, but we are getting people coming forward, really upset people.
So you think it's the scale of allegations about the past that is emerging now? It's not a witch hunt, but it's just the scale of people who've been affected by this that you're interested in?
Yeah, it is. It's genuine, honest people coming forward with a story to tell, which they were never allowed to do last time.
Bill Britton, you think there's a danger of witch hunt?
Well, I think any society should be judged how it deals with vulnerable people. And as I understand it, the Prime Minister said something about gays. This isn't about gays, it's about paedophilia, which is, you know, it's a completely different issue. You know, two consenting adults, fine. But, you know, this is not that. And I think, you know, it's the test of society is how we deal with people who are vulnerable. And these were vulnerable people and they weren't treated properly, and they should be.
Bill Britton, Keith Gregory, thank you very much for joining.